This video contains fictional depictions of blood and gore, as well as spoilers for Doom 3 and Resurrection of Evil. And because this wasn't scripted, there's no subtitles. I don't know why this game fascinates me so much. I mean, here you have Doom 3, a game that was, let's be real, a complete disappointment compared to the original games. I mean, overall it's fine. It's a good game, but it's not Doom 1 or 2. And now you have DLC for that game, which is essentially more of the same. So why can I not stop thinking about it? What is it about this small DLC that makes me so intrigued? I mean, I forgot about Doom 3 literally the second I rendered that video about it. But this game, I keep going back to it, and I don't know why. Let's start with the gameplay, which is basically just more of Doom 3. You have the exact same weapons, you get basically showered in them to the point where they become meaningless, and you only have two new weapons. First of all, the super shotgun, which is essentially an apology for the main shotgun, but funnily enough, isn't even that much better. And then you have the grabber, which is essentially the gravity gun from Half-Life, but I mean, can we admit this? It's better than the gravity gun. The gravity gun was fine for like one level, but this one you can actually use on enemy projectiles and just fling them back at them. There's even a mini-boss centered around it. And that's pretty much it, aside from the artifact, which is... Okay, the artifact is really cool. It's this item that can first slow down time, which is already cool. Then later you get berserk for it, meaning that your punches basically kill everything, which is even cooler. And then at the very end you get invulnerability for it, which is just the coolest. So this really changes up the way you approach the game, because it goes from this very claustrophobic, slow-paced horror-like game to a power trip. You just kill all enemies in seconds, and it's awesome. And the way you upgrade this thing is via the bosses. Now, the bosses are nothing to write home about, but they at least require a little bit of puzzle solving. Like, there's one boss where you have to hit its heart while it's open, there's another one where you have to open up tanks and then shoot them. It's pretty cool. But none of that really, like, fascinates me, so what about the levels? The levels are also just more of the Doom 3 stuff, even though they're less interesting. I mean, you have the grey space bases for the most part, but then you also have just tons of sewers. Though there was one sewer that was pretty interesting because it just kept looping on itself, and I thought that was the point. Like, hell was messing with you and it was sending you through the same rooms over and over again, and you had to like figure out what was causing it and then break that loop, but no, it's just the level being boring. And this whole thing gives me a lot of Blue Shift vibes, like nothing really matters, like these levels are just levels that were cut from the main game for being too boring. And even that, I don't think is what fascinates me. I think what fascinates me the most is the story. I mean, can we talk about the story? I'm dying to talk about the story. So, the game takes place 2 years after the first game. The plot is that you have to retrieve an artifact, which is this super important MacGuffin, which also attracts the villain from the previous game's attention, Betruger, and he wants it back. So, you basically have to evade him and then kill him at the end and blah 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 blah. Now, what I find fascinating about this is the first time you even get the artifact. It happens right at the beginning. The Marine walks towards the pedestal where the artifact is, and he just gets this greedy grin. Like he's so captivated by this otherworldly, this demonic thing that he doesn't even realize that it just wiped out his entire squad. He doesn't even care. After the cutscene, he just walks away. There's no pause for him going like, oh, what happened here? Oh, did I do this? Am I the bad guy? No, he doesn't care. He has this artifact and the power surges through him and he doesn't seem to care about anything else. Now, the artifact itself is kind of, I mean, it's pretty damn evil because it uses human souls to power up, and the protagonist doesn't really care. He doesn't even mind. He doesn't even mind that every time he brings this thing out, his hands seem to age like 1,000 years, like they shrivel up and they start twitching and convulsing, and he doesn't care. He keeps using it. I mean, well, it's up to the player to use it, but he keeps using it, and that's just fascinating. So I think the main guy that we play as is not an evil person. I mean, he is the hero, he defeats the villain at the end, he helps everyone, but I don't think he's 100% good either. He's kind of like he's kind of in the middle. He really cares mostly about himself, but he also makes time to help others. It's like a delicate balance, essentially. So then what happens is that you and Dr. McNeil team up to try to stop Betruga, and she actually calls most of the shots for the entire mission. And at the very end, she decides that to send you to hell, she's going to shut down all of the power, including all life systems, just so you can try to kill Betruga. And that's really deep for a Doom game. I mean, she sacrifices herself. Everyone on the entire base is going to die, including herself, which is a incredibly difficult decision to make, and it just kinda happens. She just kills everyone just so you might have a chance of stopping the bad guy, and that's grim. That's really grim for a Doom game. And I know Doom games are grim, I mean everyone dies and all that, but it's usually like blamed on hell or like greedy individuals, but for someone to make such a difficult sacrifice, that's something you'd see in the new Wolfenstein games, if anything. And thanks to her help, you do end up going to hell, but it's more of a formality at this point, like kind of like a Zen in Blue Shift. Like, you go there, but it's kind of expected. I mean, it's the end of the game, we gotta show hell, it's Doom, and it's fine, it's fine. It's like in Doom 3, it's fine. And you go through hell, and then you end up fighting Betruga. Now, Betruga was teased very much at the end of the last game. They have this giant wyvern with his face inside this skull's mouth, and it looks really, really cool. The boss itself isn't hard. I mean, it takes a few BFG shots, which was kind of difficult to aim. But then at the end, when you think you've done it, it goes wrong. Your character shoots a rocket, but it just misses, and Betruga grabs you and slams you to the ground in his jaws. He basically breaks your entire body. And then when you're just lying there on the floor, you're bleeding out internally, I'd imagine, he demands the artifact. He wants it back. He says, "Oh, give us back what you took from us." So what do? You just shove it down his throat, and he melts away kind of unceremoniously. It happens very quickly. You know, the villain from the previous game that got away, this loose end, just dies immediately in one cutscene. There's no like, ooh, might he come back, or ooh, what could this mean? No, he just dies. There's a skull. It's over. And even though you kill him, you also seem to die, because the screen just fades to black, and then you hear the voice of McNeil saying, "Welcome home, Marine." And it's implied that both of you have died and made it to the afterlife. So it's a very bittersweet ending, because even though you killed the bad guy and you saved the day, a lot of people still died, both on the space base and you and McNeil. It's much different to the Doom 3 one, where you do end up surviving, though that might be arguably worse because of, you know, you might get PTSD or everything might get swept under the rug or whatever. But it feels different. It feels very different because it doesn't really bring hope. I mean, it's kind of like they just did what they had to do. They killed the bad guy, they suffered for it, it all sucked. That's it, that's the game. There's no happy ending for them, except if you theorize that they made it to heaven, which is pretty good. But it was just a very sucky time. And then the game just ends. Fades to black, credits. There's no time to dwell on anything, like no after credit scene to show what happened afterwards, or any like text explaining, oh, years later, you know, they made a new base on Mars or whatever. No, it just ends, and that's it. It's very, much like Betruga's death, it's very unceremonious. I think that's kind of the game in a nutshell. It's very unceremonious. It reminds me a lot of Blue Shift, like I said earlier. I mean, it's just kind of this side adventure where not much happens. Like, you go through sewers and random industrial areas, and you know, what happens is important. It's not nearly as inconsequential as Blue Shift, but you could have done without the game, kind of. Like, the only thing that really matters is that Betruga is dead. Another way I describe the game is that it feels just off. I mean, you're not really a hero because of the whole artifact, and the question is, you know, were you greedy beforehand? Did the artifact turn you greedy? Like, were you always kinda, you know, leaning towards the hellish side of things, where, you know, was your psyche a bit tainted that way? We don't know. You still end up saving the day, but you also die and kill other people. Then hell invades, but it's not even the first time. It kind of like you going to hell coming to you is kind of like a formality. Like, it's just like, it's Doom, you know, hell has to be here. Here it is again. And even in the game, you can see that they've kind of been preparing more. Like, there's more like gear everywhere, and like some people are decked out in more armor and such. So they were aware of hell, and it just comes back. It's kind of like, you know, it's kind of like a tornado. Like, we prepare for it. It's not really this cataclysmic event like in the first game. It's like, we're kind of used to it at this point. Like, we're not used to it, but you know, like, we've prepared for it. Like, it happens sometimes. And then you kill off Betruga, you know, the villain that was teased at the end of the last game. Like, the way it was shown, you think that they wanted to make like 3 more games where this guy was like the main force, you know, like Death said from Wolfenstein, like, ooh, are we gonna get him in the end? He just dies immediately. He's gone. Like, there's nothing there. It's just like there was no build up really. I mean, there was build up, but there was no payoff or anything. It was just kind of as if they just wanted to tie up all the loose ends immediately because they were going to make a different game altogether, which they never ended up doing until, like, what was it, 10 years later or so. And even after you kill the bad guy, you die anyway. It's like nothing even really mattered. It just kind of stops.